Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larby.
Danielle Unsworth, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We've connected, I think, many times, likely at different events, but also on Instagram. I love all of your posts and your stories. And I'm like, I've got to have her on. You know, it's been a while that we've connected, and I want everyone to hear your story and all the amazing things that you're doing. So I'm really excited, to have you on today. I know a little bit about you, but for many people that may not, a lot of listeners, maybe just give us a 30,000-foot view.
Sure. Yes. So I started investing in real estate a long time ago, actually in 2009, but I didn't know that's what I was doing. And I didn't realize that that's what I was doing until about 2019 when I joined like the social media world. And that's kind of how I integrated into this community. I bought my first property when I was 24, didn't know what I was doing. It was a huge disaster. We can talk about that maybe later. And then I kind of learned how to refinance by accident. And that's when I kind of saw the magic of real estate. And after that, I just kind of went slow and steady by myself. I refinanced every 3, 4 years and then bought another property. And I did that on my own for about 10 years, me and my husband. And then when the pandemic hit, I had to sort of force myself to like be online, be on social media. And then I was able to connect with so many amazing people and other investors. And it really opened up this whole new community to me. And that's when I got my first real estate investing coach. And then I realized, oh my God, I've been investing this whole time and I had no idea. And that's kind of when I educated myself and I wanted to share my journey because I wanted to show other people, beginners, and especially women that you can start off by accident, not knowing what you do. But when you really do commit and take that step and decide that you're going to be investing in real estate, like so many opportunities can come just from that one decision. And so that's kind of how I grew my portfolio from 4 properties in 10 years to like over 100 in the last 3 years with like amazing partners and this crazy supportive community that we have.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, that's my journey so far. It's like a lot of information, but yes.
But it's like a snowball, right? And I mean, I feel like the same thing almost happened for me as well. As like you start slow, you learn, and then just at some point, like that snowball just gets a lot bigger because you've unlocked sometimes the strategic financing opportunities, or you're doing different strategies. And I think that's really cool. And I think that it's also, this is a slow game, and I like that you've been around for 10 years as well because there is some value in staying power. And I think there's some value in like wealth being created in the long term. And I think that's very, very important. It's not a get rich quick thing. It's not going to happen in 2 years, but it definitely happens in many years. So when you started with the 4 properties over 10 years, like were those buy and holds? Were you landlords, like just like with a long-term tenant? Is that what you were doing? Or you moving houses? Like what was your actual strategy then?
Yeah, so I didn't have a strategy. I really didn't know what I was doing. I bought my first home because I needed somewhere to live when I went to school and I didn't want to pay rent. So that's kind of how I bought that first property. And I was a waitress at the time. I was a full-time waitress. It was a nightmare getting financing. I had like literally like cash tip money trying to buy his house. It was like I just didn't know what I was doing. But I had a really great a mortgage advisor and he helped me through it. I had to get a B lender. I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but that's what it was. Um, and I bought that first property. And then a few years later, um, my husband now, well, my boyfriend at the time, we wanted to move in together. So then we bought something together and then we rented that first one. So that's kind of how it started. And then after we wanted to, you know, upgrade our home, we ended up renting that second home and then bought a third one. And every time we did that, we would just refinance and use that equity. And that's really how I ended up with the 4 properties. and became a landlord, accidental real estate investor. And I really I wasn't even doing a cash flow analysis or anything like that. It's just because we bought it at, a really decent price because it was for us to live in. So we didn't really look at it strategically, but the numbers always ended up working out because the market was starting to go up and the rents were going up at the same time. And we would always buy in like A or B plus neighborhoods because we would be living in them, right? So we always had amazing tenants and we just kind of trial and error the whole thing for 10 years. And that's kind of how we ended up with a little portfolio of 4 units. And then everything just changed after 2020.
Cool. And I think it is really interesting because, you were making it work and you didn't know what you were doing. But I want to go back to its time in the market because you were probably living in it. I'm going to guess for a couple years, maybe a little bit more. And then, because of what was happening with the fundamentals, and you maybe didn't look at the fundamentals back then. And, people were coming into the country. Things were just happening. And I think you're in Ottawa, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
So like Ottawa's, last 10 years along with many, many places in Ontario, you almost happen to be in the right place at the right time. But from a fundamental standpoint, it was probably the best area, one of the top 10, I would say, probably in Canada to invest in, and you happen to be there. So that really worked out. And because you were buying, properties that you were living in, you were likely getting an A+ tenant that wants the same school zones, that maybe is going to buy their house, right? These are likely not going to be, the C neighborhoods where there's going to be renters and it's going to be predominantly renters. They're going to stay renters. These are likely going to become homeowners. So you actually did a very great thing. And then so the pandemic happened, and was there something that happened with your job, or where you're I want to learn about this and snowball it?
Yes. So it's so crazy. In 2020 or 2019, end of 2019 is when I discovered, don't laugh at me, but I discovered podcasts. Okay. I didn't know anything about them, but I was literally in my own world. So I started listening to podcasts at the end of 2020. And that's when I started listening to um, Erwin Cito's podcast. And it just kind of really my mind just exploded. I'm like, oh my God, there are all these people doing all these amazing things with real estate. I have a few properties. Maybe I can do more with them. And I started just reading more books and listening to more podcasts. And he had a guest on the podcast that she was duplexing her properties. And then I remember thinking, I have one that's very similar to what she was describing. And then I envisioned doing it to that one property. And I'm like, why can't I duplex that one and then have 2 units instead of you know? And that's
Mhm.
kind of how it snowballed. And she ended up being my first coach. I reached out to her and then we connected. And that's kind of what just clicked. It's the podcast and seeing other people doing things um, that are possible. Because if you're not surrounded by people who are doing those things, just listening to other people still helps, because there's no one to talk to in your circle if nobody is doing that kind of, you know, um, investing, right? So if you start listening to podcasts, you're like, there's this whole other world that you can really be exposed to and leverage. And that's kind of what happened with me. My job was fine. At that time, it was I wasn't thinking that I was going to want more, but I think after a while you just realize there is so much more. Even with a 9 to 5, I'm able to do so many things. It's really how you maximize your time and how you prioritize things. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what happened. It's the podcast. They just they set me off into this whole other world.
Amazing. Well, people listening to this, they're already doing the right thing. But I will say it's not even just the podcast, but it's the podcasts that are Canadianized content if you're going to be investing in Canada. Because,
Yes.
I
Yes.
listened to a lot of American podcasts when I first was getting started, and I didn't even know how different things were. Yes, the strategies can
Mhm.
be similar, but the numbers, the financing, the taxes, the legal stuff, it's quite different. So I think the Canadian content really helps if the plan is to invest in Canada. So are you still working full time right now?
I am. So I have this amazing job and I'm not ready to let go. I think a lot of people don't actually know, even though I share it often. So I work in the international adoptions unit, and it is a very special job for me because it's very fulfilling, and I really enjoy helping families grow their families. And so I feel like I'm so privileged to have a job where I help families grow, and then another job with real estate where I help families have quality like homes to live in, right?
Cool.
So for me, at this point in my life, I feel like I'm just blessed to have both. And if one day I know that, I may, maybe switch part time or, figure out what's best for me. But I feel like right now I'm just not quite ready to leave just yet. And it's just,
Yeah, that's
you don't
awesome.
have to. That's the thing, right? You don't, that's the beauty with real estate investing. If you delegate and automate a lot of the things, which I learned how to do in the last 2 years, you don't really need to be like hands on. You just need to make the decision. So a lot of time I do a lot of my work by email, like my property manager will email things and then I make the decision, I approve things, I send it off, and like that's it, And so I feel like people who are listening and have a 9 to 5, don't feel like you have to quit or become a full time real estate investor to be a real estate investor. You can definitely do it part time. You can do it whenever you have time because it really depends on your strategy. So for me, I don't really do any Airbnbs because I know that's going to require a lot more time and effort. So
Mhm.
a lot of my strategies are, long term tenants, or I'm a passive investor. And then the active investors will, they're full time and they're going to be managing the properties. And I still get to benefit from that partnership. So really there's so many different ways to leverage that time and your capital.
And I'm glad you brought this up too, because like, there are many people that probably love their jobs, and and I had a really good job myself, and I probably could have left a little bit earlier, but I had to do what was right for my amazing boss at the time, who had to take
Mm.
some time off to take care of his wife, so I was not going to leave them high and dry. And at some point though, like when he came back and got back into the swing of things, work was getting in the way of what I could do. And then there's going to be that time where you make the decision, but it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. I mean, look, if you don't like your job, sure, make the change happen
Yes.
faster. But I was investing personally myself 7 years before I made the leap to do this full time. And I think a lot of doors open up. But I want to go back to what you said because that was really interesting. Is there's lots of different strategies. There's going to be
Mhm.
some that are going to be more passive than others, and if you do want to keep your job, or if your job is demanding, maybe pick something that is a little bit more passive. Like you mentioned, you're a passive joint venture partner in some projects. You do long-term rentals in some projects rather than the short-term or the midterm that will require a little bit more hands-on. And I like that you said delegation. So let's talk about delegation and processes. Like what are some things that you currently are delegating out, or, taking off your plate and kind of just overseeing and managing?
Oh my gosh, Sarah, honestly, I was doing everything myself up to about last year. I was like my own bookkeeper, my marketing, officer. I was tenant screening. I was doing everything. So now, after reading like Who Not How, and also getting a coach and helping me, systemize things, I barely do anything anymore, to be honest. I only make decisions and I have like the vision. And then it's like having like mini hands everywhere and helping me implement that vision. So I have two VAs. They help me with like my email marketing, my bookkeeping, presentations. I host a lot of free workshops because I love sharing information and I love teaching. And those presentations are created by my VAs. We go over like the templates, the ideas, and then like they put together these beautiful presentations. I have a property manager. So I, like if there's an issue, he sends me emails. I say yes, no, and yeah. So pretty much almost everything. I have a social media manager now that helps me with ideas and editing, like putting in the captions and all of that stuff. But I really appreciate all those things because I actually did them all myself. So I know what's involved and what it takes to make it work. So when we, have meetings, they're much more productive because I already know like the behind the scenes. So I
Mhm.
feel like it's really important to delegate, But to be able to delegate effectively, you also have had to have some experience doing that job yourself, right? So it's like I always use this analogy. It's like a manager at a restaurant. I used to work at a corporation and everything was run a certain way. And the manager had to know every position of that restaurant before becoming a manager. And I feel like that's kind of what you have to do as a real estate investor. You have to know a little bit of everything so that you're able to delegate effectively. And so, yeah, so I barely have to do any of that now. I just make sure everything runs smoothly and I approve things and it's the best, honestly. Even like, I think what you and I talked about, even delegating meals, like I have a friend, she loves to cook. So guess what? Like that's what I'm delegating to her, because it makes her so happy to make these delicious meals. And I love eating her meals. So she's gonna, just enjoy making them for me. And I feel like that's really the key is finding people that enjoy doing those things. And then you just, help them like do what they enjoy best.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it'd be helpful for like anybody listening to this, just like look at your calendar, look at like your last like 4 weeks, and then look at the things that you either did that you didn't enjoy or that you're not good at and figure out like who can you delegate something to. And I'll tell you, even just like, and I've had a chef for so long and now I'm like doing like, I have like 3 chefs I'm actually in rotation with
Oh, I love that so much.
because actually probably 4 because there's one cottage one that I go to. And then I have 3 actually at my primary. And I'll tell you the reason is I know this sounds like horrible to say, but like no matter what your setup is, you're gonna get sick of that, whatever that is. So you're like, so I found for us is that we have to rotate between like 3 different options and then maybe like a week off because there's no perfect solution that's going to be permanent forever. And your friend must make great meals too. And at some point you might want to switch it up. And that's truly what happens. I do believe that. But write down guys like what you don't enjoy doing, what takes a lot of time, and don't just go watch Netflix for the time that you save, but like actually do something productive, right? So
Oh,
like
yeah, no.
acquisitions, negotiations, like what are some of the things that you think are like high ticket items that you're like, I can't delegate this stuff. This is strictly you. Like what are some of those things?
So the number one thing is for me, it's well, it's not number one. It's the creating the content. Like your face has to be in those videos, right? So I always allocate content creating, and then you can send it off to your social media manager to do the editing and all of that stuff. But then also like vetting deals and creating those connections. So for me, I have to have time to be able to connect with people because in real estate, that's where everything kind of happens, right? Like when you talk to different investors or you talk to future investors. And also for me, it's giving back. Like I love talking to new investors and just, opening their eyes to different strategies that they can use that they didn't even know existed, like as something as simple as like, how to calculate their net worth, things like that. So those are things like I really enjoy doing. And so that's where I like to spend my time. And then with my VAs, I've trained them to, underwrite deals. But then when they send it to me, I go through it again because, we have to go through that due diligence. So those are the things that really you need to do because it requires your unique skill set but also the things that you enjoy doing. So it's kind of a combination of both, right?
Mhm.
Um, they don't necessarily have to be high ticket items, but they have to be things that you enjoy doing. Therefore, they become high ticket items for you. So I feel like it has to be that combination. And then everything else, really, you can delegate if it doesn't require your face, and your unique skill set, you can delegate it. I'm sure there is somebody that will love to take over that task.
Yeah, absolutely. So for, 4 properties to over 100 units or whatnot, um, I'm sure a lot of it came from being able to delegate, so you were able to acquire it and make decisions and negotiate. What did you end up buying? Are these multifamily properties? Are they in Canada?
Yes.
Are they out of the country? Like what are they?
So yes. So to get to that number, you kind of need the multifamily. Otherwise, it takes a long time to have the single family homes.
Mhm.
So a lot of them are the larger multifamily units, and a lot of them are also passive, right? Because I don't have the time to oversee major renovations, but if I can leverage my partners and they're able to do that, then that's great. And then we do have 3 condos in Turks and Caicos. And our active partner, Mark Perry, if you guys want to check him out, he's amazing. And on Instagram, his name is at Palm Tree Life. And that's how we connected because I love the name, right? Because I'm obsessed with palm trees.
Nice.
And that's how we connected, really. And he is the active partner there, and he's overseeing those 3 condos, and he's doing like an amazing job. And so that's kind of how I was able to grow is leveraging other people's time, their expertise, and also their location. Because when you start looking at Turks and Caicos, you're like, oh my God, it's good. How would I buy a property? I don't know anybody there. I don't know how to manage things all the way over there. But then when you connect with someone and they live there and they're super experienced and they know what they're doing, why not leverage their expertise, right? So that's kind of how I did that. I was just able to kind of strategically pick the projects that I want to be a part of, but not necessarily have to be hands on.
Mhm.
And really, I think that's the key, especially for people who are working 9 to 5 and want to build a real estate portfolio. You don't need to buy all of the properties yourself. You can partner with people who would love to partner with you and work full time on those projects.
Yeah, and I will say, like, when you hear somebody having 100 doors plus, I would say 98% of the time, they're doing it with some kind of joint venture or
Oh,
partnership
yeah.
of some sort, right?
Yes. I
Especially scaling at that level fast, as you did as well. Like, myself too, like, once I left my 9 to 5 job, then that's when I started, finding some partners and doing some JVs. Prior to that, I kinda just did my thing with my spouse, but, in order to really scale in a shorter amount of time, there might be utilization of like, I mean, it can still be private money. Sure, you could do it with
Mhm.
private money, but like you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons. But oftentimes, I think 98% of the time, it's either a partnership or it's going to be some kind of joint venture agreement, or you're raising funds in a GPLP structure or something along those lines. So your multifamily properties, are they in Ottawa or are they further out?
Most of them are in New Brunswick.
Hmm.
And then my sister and I, we have a 6 unit in Edmonton. We were diversifying a little bit. But that one is a pre-construction and we are managing it ourselves with a property manager on site. And that one's going really well. But most of them are on the East Coast. But they're
Okay.
going like they're doing really well, So that's the thing. With today's technology, you don't really need to be there. And that's one of the things that I find newer investors, they really want to be able to drive to go see the properties, right? And I always say, with all the resources we have now, you really don't need to. As long as you have a strong team wherever your property is located, you can effectively manage it, whether it's yourself or your partner with, being boots on the ground.
For
But
sure.
for our Edmonton property, my sister and I, you know, it's through Zoom calls and emails and, videos, and it's working 100% fine. So really,
Yeah.
that's a message for newer investors. Like, don't, limit yourself to properties that, you're living in or close to where you are. Because sometimes people will expand to like, let's say 2 hours within, their like primary location, but you can go way beyond that. Like, don't limit yourself because
Yeah.
of location. Find a great team and build your team there.
Yeah, no, great insight for sure. So is it fair to assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't actually know, that you've got an active partner then in New Brunswick, and then you are either the money partner or you're raising funds for the active partner and coming in on the deal and a percentage of some sort. Is that kind of accurate? Not accurate? Like how do you
Yeah.
structure them? Because there's like so many ways you can do it, right?
Yes, there is. That's the thing. And
Yeah.
I actually do like all of them. I've been a partner where I am the partner that raises the money, and I'm also the one. I have a partner where we manage as well. Like we have a 15 unit, and it's my other business partner and myself. We manage that. So I'm both. I'm both active and passive, and I can also raise capital, and I also own properties just on my own, and then so I really do a little bit of everything,
Mhm.
but it's because I really enjoy it, and the reason why I'm passive is so that I can leverage my money to work for me essentially. But I like being on the active side because I'm learning at the same time. So I feel like, I get to kind of enjoy like both worlds at this point in my life. Is this something I'm really enjoying? But
Mhm.
maybe later on, I may switch just, to passive investing, right? If I keep
Yeah.
my full time job, maybe the passing is enough. But that's the thing with real estate. You have to kind of adapt to what your goals are and what your lifestyle is like, right? Like, right, I still have young children, so I want to spend time with them. I don't want to spend all of my time doing real estate because, I want to be able to enjoy the time I have with them. But maybe later on, when they're full adults, I might go full time real estate investor. You never know.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, that's the beauty of it. Like, there's so many strategies. There's also so many ways that you can slice and dice the partnerships as well.
Exactly.
And there's, I mean, and it's not like a one size fits all anymore. Like, where like you learn one strategy and you do it in the market over and over and over. You actually have to pivot because the market is so ever changing. The rates, the prices, like
Mhm.
the stuff that worked when you started buying in Ottawa likely doesn't work anymore for any cash flow
No.
whatsoever. So there's like, there's ways that we have to now adapt and like strategize and scale. And scaling may be by yourself, but it might be with JVs and it might be with partnerships and it might be with, you having different roles. So I think that's really cool. I love how you give back to the community as well. So let's talk about Wink. What is Wink and why did Wink get started?
Yes. Oh my God, I love it. So WINC it stands for the Women Investors Network Canada, and it's a community that I co-founded with Esther and Aki here in Ottawa. And we created this community because we all felt alone, like especially we met through social media during the pandemic, and that's kind of how we started connecting. And we just felt like we were always like alone in our own circles, and we figured other women must feel the same way. And so we started hosting these meetups, and it just kind of grew and grew. And during the pandemic, we decided to take some of those meetups online as well because a lot of places were closed. And so we are actually, we have chapters across Canada, and we're growing. And actually, we're looking for a co host in the BC area. So if anyone is listening and would like to join our community, please like reach out with the word WINK. It's with a C for Canada. And we would love to have you because this community is growing, and we just feel like so supportive. Like the women come together and they get to ask each other questions. They don't feel threatened. They feel really comfortable. They don't have to feel like they're crazy, always talking about like money and real estate and investing. And it's a really safe place for people just to, feel like, they can be moms, they can be, entrepreneurs, they can be 9 to 5, employees, and still come together and talk about finances and investing, and not have to worry about feeling like, they're an outcast or that they're the only ones who feel this way. And so that's why we created Wing. And it's just such a it's been such a blessing to connect with everybody, honestly. And like you were our first guest speaker, Sarah. I don't know if you
Was
remember
I
this.
really? I was your first ever?
Yes, our first
Oh,
online guest
cool.
speaker.
Oh, awesome. I love it. Well, I just love what you guys are doing. I mean, like, and it's nice to be, I'll tell you, this community in general of real estate investors is so giving of time and help, which is amazing. And it's nice that you're like also like curating it for women and moms and, all that stuff as well. And it sounds like you guys have like, you've grown like crazy, right? Like,
Yeah.
you started just online, I think, in just in Ottawa, and now you're like in a lot of different locations. Like,
Yeah.
which ones do you have, people
So
running the
yes,
groups
so
for?
we have so definitely so Ottawa is like the headquarters, and then we have a chapter in Montreal, Halifax, Toronto. We're gonna be having a co-host in Hamilton soon. We have one for Kitchener, Waterloo, and Edmonton, Calgary. So really, like it's really growing, and we would
Nice.
love one in the BC area, and maybe even like up north, right? You never know if whoever is interested, please reach out. And then I actually want to share a story. The reason why it's so important for me, especially to help moms, especially single moms, it's because when I was 10, my mom ended up selling her house. And because she needed the capital, she needed the money. She felt like she had no other choice but to sell her home. And I always think about that moment when I'm like, I wish I had been older so I could have told her like, no, don't sell, just refinance, take the money and then do what you need to do with it. But of course, like I was only 10. So that's kind of like why we do what we do now is I want to educate women so that they have more financial options and feel more financially secure. Because when you have your own home, like for us, after we sold our home, we had to rent for many years. And when you rent, sometimes what happens is the landlord, like, has to sell the house or they have to do the renovation. So really, you don't feel like it's your own home. So
Mhm.
that's why for me, when I have all these units, I want to make sure the tenants feel like they're safe and they have quality homes. And if we do have to give them like a letter, we give lots of notice and we provide a really good justification. So that's kind of why this whole like community and just the strategy that I use is really important because it comes from that story. So I just want to share that because it's so important, like as my why.
Yeah, no, it is a great why. And like you said, like if she was able to refinance and maybe you still have that house to this day.
I know it would be worth so much.
So where can people find out more about Wink?
So Wink, we are on Instagram. So it's at wink.investors. And we also have a Facebook page. You can just type it in. It's the same name. So Women Investors Network Canada. And all the information is there. And if anybody's interested in the membership, the link is in the bio of the Wink IG.
Amazing, amazing. All right, cool. So the next part of the podcast is our lightning round. So Danielle, I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to give me the first answer that comes to mind, and you're going to answer in like 20 seconds or less. So you're
Okay.
ready to play.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Question number 1: what is your favorite real estate investing book?
Real estate investing book. I actually love Terry Chan's tax book. I know I'm such a huge dork, but I read it all the time. It's like right by me and I highlight, I reference it, I tell everybody about it. Actually, it's right here. So I'm not even lying.
Awesome. All right.
It's so good. You need to know taxes, right? Like,
Yes, it is. I'm like deathly afraid of like paperwork. I like hire as much of it out as I can, including things that have to do with my taxes. But yes, no, it is definitely important. Number 2, this doesn't have to be real estate specific.
okay.
You have a favorite podcast.
So I'm biased. I'm it's Erwin Cito's because it's the one that started everything for me. So the truth about real estate investing for Canadians, definitely still my favorite podcast.
Okay, cool. What do you do for fun is the number 3 question.
Oh, I do so many things for fun. I love fun things. So I'm taking salsa, bachata, like Latin dance
Nice.
lessons. I lift weights for fun. Um, yeah, like yoga, like just so many things.
All right, cool. Number 4, if you lost everything tomorrow, all your assets, your properties, your money, how would you start again?
Oh, I would go to networking events. Honestly, the most of them are free. You would go there, learn, and I would just start over because now that you've learned the skills and what it takes, I have like 100% confidence in myself that I'm able to recreate everything again, but even faster this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And final question number 5, if somebody has $50,000, they only have 50 grand, but they want to get started in some capacity, how would you recommend they spend their money?
So you can actually do a lot with $50,000. So I would split it into 5 categories. If you're a new investor, I would save $10,000 for like peace of mind money so that you don't have to have like that scarcity mindset when you're trying to build. You know you have $10,000 for your like safety net. I would take 10,000 and invest in myself, find a coach. You don't need to spend $50,000 on a coach. Like 10 is more than sufficient. I started with a much lower price bracket, so definitely 10,000 invest in yourself. The other 10,000 I would invest in my health. So something that, gives you like joy, keeps your body moving because you have to be in good shape for you to be able to invest, right? Like it's
Mhm.
all linked together. And then the other 10,000 I would I would do maybe like a small private lending just to get the taste of it, right? Like start off with a small private lending. loan and to see how that works. And then the other 10, I would do something that either like to give back to the community, something to pay it forward. So that's how I would break that up. Because
Okay.
you
All
can
right.
do a lot. Like 50,000 is a lot, you know? You don't have to put it all in one place.
Yeah. No, that's probably the first time somebody answered it like that with like splitting into so many different categories. So
Oh,
it's
I'm
no,
very
it's good. I love
systematic
it. I love
now.
it. I like it a lot. Uh,
Thank you.
Danielle, where can my listeners reach out, find out more if they wanted to connect with you?
So my website, it's super easy to remember, DanielleUnsworth.com. And I'm very active on Instagram as well. Same thing at Danielle.com. Not .com, sorry, Danielle.Unsworth. And yeah, that's where you can find me. And I love responding to my DMs. So if you're listening to this podcast, you can DM me the word. Usually I find like a fun word. So we could do, I guess, what do we wink, I guess? Just DM me the word wink and then I'll know that you listened to this podcast. And
Or Inspire for Inspire Beach Resort. How about that?
yes, I love that. I must have
Or
one.
Inspire Wink. Let's do
Inspire wink.
Wink.
I love that.
Combine
Okay,
them
let's do it.
together.
Let's do
Okay.
Inspire wink. And that's how we will know you listened to this podcast.
Awesome. Danielle, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you on. And thank you for sharing your story and being very open and providing some great value to the listeners.
Thank you so much. Honestly, it's an honor to be here, Sarah.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larby. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest?